Hi, everyone. I'm David Williams, president of strategy consulting firm Health Business Group and host of the Health Biz Podcast, a weekly show where I interview top healthcare leaders about their lives and careers. My guests today are wound healing entrepreneurs. They are co-founders of BioStem Technologies. Jason Matuszwewski is the CEO and Andrew Van Vurst is the COO. Welcome, Jason and Andrew, to the Health Biz Podcast.
Thanks, David, for having us on. We're excited for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Sounds very good. Well, I want to start with your sort of childhood and upbringing, and assuming that you didn't grow up all together, I'll do it separately. So, Jason, what was your childhood like? Any influences that have stuck with you through your career?
Yeah, thanks, David, again for having us on the podcast today. My childhood background is I grew up. My parents were entrepreneurs, and I took the road of going through engineering college at the Milwaukee School of Engineering. My background or my engineering degree is in mechanical engineering technology, so leveraging technology, i.e. computer science, computer programming to solve conventional engineering problems. I kind of parlayed that into initially out of college working in the material science space, mostly on the metals side, so DoD projects and industrial projects, aerospace projects, and really had a passion for material science and leveraging technology to solve material engineering problems. And throughout that, prior to graduating college and things of that nature, I actually met one of the other founders, Andrew's father, through racing, a passion that I started when I was young at 5 years old through go-karting, which drove me to being able to be a partner and work with Mazda Motorsports, where I met Andrew's father. And that's kind of the connection, how we got together, and leveraging my engineering background, material science background, as well as racing, and our connection is how some of the things got started here at BioStem.
That sounds pretty cool. So what do you what kind of cars are you racing these days?
Sadly, 100%. I'm 100% dedicated to BioStem, so very limited free time doing racing, but
it's probably like in the
dream about it.
It's in the investor documents. It's like, you have to stay below 75 miles an hour. Well,
Yeah.
So what do you drive on the street then?
A Tesla. So
Tesla.
Not even something fun. So
Tesla's fun. At least it's
Yeah.
good because you can responsibly you can hit 60 miles an hour before anybody notices what happened. It's nice and nice and quiet.
This is true.
I have one of those too. Somebody asked me today. I was backing it up into a parking space and they'd never seen one before, and he's like, "What is that thing?" Was that like a UFO or something?
So you didn't back it up
that
little phone.
I could have done that. But I do miss that Wankel engine or whatever they used to have in the Mazdas, right? So it was rotary. That was
rotary
cool.
Engines.
Yeah,
RX-7s, RX-8s.
Yeah, those are pretty cool. Well, I never had one of those, but those were fun. All right, Andrew, how about you? You're the racer now, is that right?
I did a little bit of racing, not to the tune of what Jason mentioned or that my father was involved in. Obviously, that's a connection of how we met Jason through his mechanical engineering experience and working with Mazda. My father was introduced to him racing with Mazda as well. So that's a connection there. But my background, my father was an entrepreneur, had a lot of different businesses, throughout my life. And my personal background, I went to college for a year, found out, I wanted to join the military. I'd always had that passion since high school. And I went into the Marine Corps. I was a CH-53 helicopter flight line mechanic there. So I, kind of how that ties in or where it led me to where we're at today. A lot of my job was related on pre-flight, post-flight inspections, following standard operating procedures, all the things that, require when you have someone's safety or military safety or pilot safety, crew safety involved from an inspection or maintenance standpoint. But a lot of what I did, while I was in was transitioning from our paper-based standard operating procedures to a tough book type standard operating procedure system, making sure all those changes were implemented properly as part of one of the job tasks I had while I was in. And that transitioned really well into what we do now from a regulatory standpoint. We're obviously have oversight from the FDA. We're accredited tissue bank by the American Association of Tissue Banks, or AATB. So a lot of that experience from a quality regulated process type environment really parlayed into what we do here as far as is, tissue processing. But, background and what led me to here is the other part of your question is, work ethic, I think, was instilled by my father and a lot of other people, including the military personnel through boot camp training and things like that. But work ethic is something that's always stuck with me. And just, making sure everything is 100% kosher and signed off properly. And as long as you follow the instructions, you don't have to worry about getting in trouble. So I think, we're a very compliant company, and my background's helped us get there.
That sounds like the way to go. Well, we'll talk about tissues in a moment. I got one more Mazda story for you, though. So I was in Japan one time in Hiroshima, where Mazda's headquartered, and I met Mark Fields at the time, who was running Mazda, later ran Ford. And they have, they're a little tight on space in Japan, so they don't have individual offices. Everyone sort of sits around a table, chairs, and the difference is that Mark's chair had like this big doily on it. That's how you can know that was the CEO. But it was an interesting space, and the folks that they really revered the most there, I had some old timers who could take an engine block and bang it out without any tools or anything and get like a perfect fit. I think those guys have all died off by now, but that's who they worship.
Yeah, machines are taking over now.
Yeah. Anyway, those darn machines. But in any case, so let's talk a little bit about. So I got your sort of origin story, how you met, and all that. But why found this company? I mean, what was the unmet need that you wanted to try to solve for?
Yeah, honestly, or I guess actually, it was a met need that I guess led us into this company. My father's been through quite a bit of cancer bouts, and most recently, I guess his second most recent cancer bout was in 2010, 2011, where we had ventured over to Stockholm, Sweden to do some kind of clinical type study treatments. It was a gamma laser knife where he had gray matter radiation on his head. After that, he had some stroke-like symptoms of slight paralysis on the left side of his body, impaired speech and things. So what we were doing is trying to find a way to help heal him back from a quality of life standpoint. He was still alive and well, besides still having to deal with the cancer and treatments like that. But how does he benefit from a quality of life and maintain a quality of life stand? So what we did was we started researching regenerative medicine, and this was a hot topic at the time, especially back then. Stem cells was a hot topic. So we started looking into it, and we found a regenerative medicine company that did medical tourism out of Dominican Republic and Mexico in Guadalajara, and met with the scientists, met with the doctors, got comfortable enough to go do a treatment for my father based on his success and just seeing real world example firsthand, the benefits he had from a quality of life standpoint. We knew we were passionate about it. So that's really what started and catalyzed the whole starting of the company. The company that we were introduced to was going through some capital raising and things like that. They were trying to restructure a little bit. And the opportunity that kind of opened up was we reached out to Jason, knew his background. We knew, and trusted Jason and knew he was someone that we would trust to start a business with and have the best interest in mind. And we purchased the controlling interest company and have developed it since then, since 2014 in August when we took it over.
Sounds good. Well, I know, it's a kind of a miraculous type of technology, but it's difficult to make a strong business out of it, which I think is one of the reasons why you probably, was in a position to purchase it in the first place, because it's just a challenge. The technology is hard enough, and the business is tough too. What have been some of the milestones for the company since 2014? What have you gone through? What are some of the things you've achieved? What are some of the pitfalls that you've hit?
Yeah, so I'll start with pitfalls. I think initially we were, I'd say maybe overzealous in what we could accomplish. So we had a few horses in the race, and we were doing API repackaging, so repackaging pharmaceutical ingredients for smaller compounding pharmacies. We started venturing into reformulation or 505(b)(2) drugs, changing the delivery mechanism of those drugs. So as far as a pitfall, it was a lack of focus. The benefit and positive side of that, looking at the glass half full, was that we got a lot of experience in a regulated industry before we ventured into this tissue space. So we had DEA licenses, we had FDA licenses, inspections, things like that. that gained us the experience to apply the pharmaceutical type manufacturing and processes, the GMP or good manufacturing practices compliantly to the tissue arena, which was something that when we entered into the tissue space was somewhat lacking. There was issues with companies producing products and not testing them or releasing them before they were tested. So knowing all of those processes and having gone through it for a few years before we entered into this market in 2018, really gained us that experience. So it was a positive and a negative at the same time. I think, one of the positives was going back to the same point is establishing focus in 2018 in the tissue space. You mentioned, it's somewhat of a hard business. And when you talk about medical tourism, I would completely agree with you. Trying to get, patients comfortable with going to another country to have a treatment that's not approved in the US was something we realized pretty quickly. That's why we ventured into those other pharmaceutical type products. But with the, Public Health and Safety Act, the specific section we're under of tissue allografts being a product that was allowed in the US, it really opened up an opportunity for us to be involved in regenerative medicine here and build a great business that has a lot of potential for it inside the US. And you can see that from, other competitive companies that are, the amount of revenue they're doing, the amount of, even beyond that, the amount of lives they're changing is really the topic, we like to promote. This is the tissue we take is otherwise medical discarded waste, and it can go to help heal a patient's foot, ankle, anything like that, any type of open wound. And it becomes, a benefit to both parties.
Jason, what have you found since being involved in the company? Did you get what you were thought you were signing up for, or something entirely different?
I think Andrew hit the nail on the head. In the early years, we definitely were swimming upstream and trying to find the path of which way we wanted to go. But I think the opportunity to like Andrew mentioned, really dive in and get intimate with the knowledge of FDA regulatory environment, getting DEA licenses, working through those processes really helped us kind of cut our teeth on what we wanted to, how to navigate those paths. At the same time, what good looks like, right? And what we did find is that in 2018, when we made the pivot to tissue allografts, is that there was a lack of call it real tight regulatory FDA mantra in this space, and it gave us an opportunity to really kind of apply what we learned over the first 3 to 4 years and deploy that into the tissue space. And I think what Andrew highlighted too is really the opportunity. Not only we get to work and provide products that change people's lives on the output side, utilizing our grafts on patients with diabetic foot ulcers, pressure ulcers, and venous ulcers, but also having the opportunity to work with gracious donors that actually donate this tissue from full-term births and showing that kind of full circle, which otherwise would be medical waste, the opportunity to utilize that tissue for really great outcomes for patients. A lot of the patients that we're affecting are patients that are Medicare beneficiaries, folks that are 65 and older, maybe even their grandparents, for example. So great full circle opportunity, from birth to at the end of years of your life.
Yeah, you mentioned that the FDA pathways maybe are a little bit unclear when you got started. What is a development path now for the sector that you're working with? Is it well defined, and what is development like compared to, let's say, a more traditional pharmaceutical product, which your listeners might be more familiar with?
Yeah, I'd say a pharmaceutical product is obviously like mainly like a chemical entity or something that you're developing to target a specific thing that you're not aware of what the potential side effects or detriments are of that chemical. So there's a longer development process, safety studies, dose level toxicity studies, things like that are involved. These tissue allografts are regulated similarly to organ transplants and any kind of transplant tissue, whether it be an organ or tissue. And the process or development pathway is, I'd say, a little bit minimized because you're using a human biologic tissue going into another human. You're not using, for instance, there's other products on the market that use fish skin or bovine material or things from pig tissue. that requires a lot more testing just with the unknown, since you're applying it from human to human. Amniotic tissue, birth tissue in general, has been used since the early 1900s, if not before that. So the safety and toxicity level data, there's no issues with it, and it's been established for a long time. So what we're required to do, I guess, in another way to answer your question, it might be a little bit outside, but what we're required to do is make sure the tissue is free of any transmission or potential transmission of communicable diseases. And we have a procurement agency actually who collects the tissue, but they do social and medical history screening on the patient, and each tissue is actually sent off for sampling and testing to verify all that information prior to us getting it. So that's our process in a really high level way, is to make sure all the tissue we provide is free of what's called RCDADs, relevant communicable diseases and disease agents.
Got it. So where do you stand in terms of the commercial life of the company? Do you have products on the market? What's in development? And what's the current stage of the entity?
Yeah, it's a great question. In late 2020, kind of the end of the pandemic, we were awarded a Q code for reimbursement through Medicare, and that's really what propelled 2021 into 2022. Is the ability to actually get coverage through Medicare on our products. And our initial line of products, Vendaje or Vendage, a single layer amnion product, was the one that was originally issued the first Q code. We anticipate getting an additional Q code for Vendage AC, which is an amnion chorion, or 2 layers of the product, in the beginning of the first quarter of this year, which will add access for our product line into that Medicare space. We also were able to actually get on a federal supply schedule through the VA, so distribution through the VA. All of these things kind of leading up to maximizing distribution. And one of our initiatives this year is to really grow that Salesforce presence, grow our W2 Salesforce with up to about 25 members servicing throughout the United States, and targeting private practice clinicians as well as into the surgical setting in ASCs, and providing this product not only for diabetic foot ulcers, pressure ulcers, and venous ulcers, but other surgical applications for these products. Over the last few years, we've seen some tremendous growth on our revenue side, 30 to 40% growth rate year over year. And we're anticipating, continuing that growth rate mantra as we, look forward into 2023.
That sounds good. So now, as you look beyond 2023, let's say, pick your time frame, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, where do you see the company? What's going to be possible? Is just going to be sort of bigger and better, more of the same, or new things, above and beyond what you're doing today?
Yeah, I think our opportunity is, to continue to grow our product portfolio. Obviously, right now, we're focused on wound care, foot and ankle aspects, but moving outside of that, like I mentioned earlier, into the surgical setting, growing product portfolio into that surgical setting, whether it be in the nerve space, whether it be in the plastic space, looking at potential acquisitions or targets that help complement our current product portfolio. So as our sales representatives walk into a practice, they have an opportunity to not only provide tissue products, but also other products that help support that private practice clinic. And then, hopefully as we continue to grow and look at the regulatory environment, work on, more longer term goals on the product side, looking at ways to either leverage 510K device routes or BLA routes for products in the future.
Good. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. Now, my last question is a hobby related thing. I know you don't have time for racing cars, or at least to tell the investors about it, but in terms of any books that you've read lately, or maybe in the past, do you have any books that you might recommend? I'll ask each one of you in turn.
Yeah, I would recommend, and read last year, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, something Jason and I both read. Especially with a entrepreneurial or startup type environment, getting a company off the ground and running, it's important to, have a mentality of 100% ownership on everything you do, and not looking for blame or passing blame any which way you can. At the end of the day, it's got to get done. So how do we come together as a team to accomplish those goals? Whether it seems like a mountain you got to climb or not, take the elephant one bite at a time and get it done. That's one of the most influential books I've read recently.
Yeah, I think to answer that question, one book that both Andrew and I probably have read 2 or 3 times at this point is by Mark Andreessen, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. It really, is a true to the core being an entrepreneur and making those hard decisions, and when to make those hard decisions, and really what do you learn from that, and how do you continue to grow your business and build upon some of those hard decisions, and identifying the right people to put in places as you grow your business. So I really truly love the book. I think it's probably one of the most business forward books that I've read that actually truly touches on being an entrepreneur and making tough decisions.
That book is like the theme book. I should give it as like the tagline for the Health Biz podcast, because that is the most commonly recommended book. And I finally did read it. And it's, one of the reasons entrepreneurs identify with it is, mostly what you read about and hear about is all these, success stories and all the heroics. And first of all, a lot of businesses fail. But secondly, the successful ones have near-death experiences, routinely. And so that is a tale that I think really resonates with people that are in it. So that's a good one. I would agree. Well, I want to say thank you today to my guests, both co-founders of BioStem Technologies. We've been talking about regenerative medicine, wound healing, CEO Jason Matuszwewski, and the COO Andrew Van Vurst. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Health Biz podcast.
Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Health Biz podcast with me, David Williams, president of Health Business Group. I conduct in-depth interviews with leaders in healthcare business and policy. If you like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite service. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe on your second and third favorite services as well. There's more good stuff to come, and you won't want to miss an episode. If your organization is seeking strategy consulting services in healthcare, check out our website, healthbusinessgroup.com.